You will not believe the day I found out my promotion was tied to betrayal. Not just at work, but at home. But before I get to that, let me tell you how I thought I was living the dream. I grew up in a small town, nothing flashy. My dad worked in a little office, and my mom picked up odd jobs to help us get by. Money was tight, but we were happy. My mom inherited a house, so we had a roof over our heads. I was an only child, and my parents loved each other fiercely. Watching them taught me what love and loyalty should look like. That's what I wanted for my own life. By high school, I had one goal: to succeed. I studied hard, won a scholarship to a great university, and left home at 18, moving miles away. It was a big change. I missed my family, but I knew this was my chance to make something of myself. College was tough. Not just the academics, but seeing how much money mattered in the world. My classmates had expensive cars, flashy clothes, and always seemed to have the upper hand. I didn't have much, just a small allowance from my dad that barely covered books. Instead of letting that bother me, I worked harder. I told myself I'd make it big one day. No distractions, no shortcuts, just pure effort. After graduating, I landed an entry-level executive job at a big corporation in New York City. That first paycheck, it wasn't much, but it was mine. I bought tickets for my parents to visit me. They stayed in my tiny apartment, and I gave them a tour of the city. Even though I couldn't afford anything fancy, I was proud to show them how far I'd come. A year later, I got my first promotion and finally moved into my own apartment. Life was starting to look good. Then, one random day, everything changed. I met Sarah. She was my neighbor, and the moment I saw her, I was blown away. She wasn't just beautiful, there was something about her energy that pulled me in. I hadn't dated in a while, so I was nervous, but fate helped me out. One day, Sarah invited me for coffee, and just like that, our story began. We started dating, and before I knew it, I was proposing. She said yes. We had a small wedding, family, close friends, nothing too extravagant. It was perfect. Just 4 years after graduating, I had what I thought was the ideal life. A great job, a loving wife, and dreams of building a future together. The next couple of years flew by. Sarah chased her dream of becoming a fashion designer, and I focused on my career. I got promoted again, this time to department head. That's when I became friends with Mike, the CEO of the company. He was young, ambitious, and seemed like a great guy, and he was married to Rebecca, and the four of us would hang out occasionally. Things seemed perfect, maybe too perfect. I thought we were all building something solid, something real. But looking back, I missed the cracks forming beneath the surface. I remember the first night Sarah didn't come home on time. I had cooked dinner, a rare thing for me since work usually kept me busy. I had even set the table, thinking it would be nice to share a meal and talk about our day. But hours went by and she never showed up. I must have fallen asleep on the couch because the next thing I knew, the sun was coming up. When I finally saw her the next morning, she brushed it off like it was no big deal. "Work ran late," she said casually, kissing my cheek before hurrying out the door. I told myself it was fine. Sarah had her career, and I knew how demanding work could be. But then it happened again and again. At first, I tried not to overthink it. People get busy, right? Still, something felt off. She started coming home later and later, her phone always tucked away when she was around me. I convinced myself I was imagining things, but the more I tried to ignore it, the more those little tales started piling up. One night, I decided to wait up for her. I didn't tell her, didn't text or call. I just sat there, trying to keep my mind from spiraling as the hours dragged on. When she finally walked through the door around 3 a.m., I asked her straight out, "What's going on?" Her response, "I told you, I'm working late. Deadlines, John. It's stressful." She said it so smoothly, like I was the one being unreasonable for asking. Then she headed straight to bed, leaving me sitting there with a knot in my stomach. The next day, I thought about swinging by her workplace to surprise her, but I stopped myself. It felt wrong, like crossing some line. Instead, I told myself to trust her, to give her space. But trust doesn't work the way people say it does. It's not blind, and it doesn't ignore red flags. The real turning point came a week later. I'd barely seen her, and every time we talked, it felt forced. One night, while I was waiting for her, I noticed her laptop on the counter. I had never looked through her things before. It wasn't how we did things. But curiosity, or maybe desperation, got the better of me. I opened it, half expecting to find work files or emails, but instead, I found her browsing photos from some fancy restaurant. Photos of expensive dishes and wine glasses. The timestamps on those photos matched the nights she'd claimed to be working late. That was the moment my doubt turned into something heavier. Sarah wasn't just busy. She was lying. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but the thought of what I might hear kept me frozen. Instead, I closed the laptop, sat back, and tried to make sense of everything. I started paying more attention after that. Her stories didn't line up, her smile seemed forced, and every time I asked how her day had gone, she'd quickly change the subject. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she wasn't telling me. I wasn't ready to accuse her of anything, not yet. But I knew one thing for sure. Whatever this was, it wasn't just in my head. Something was happening, and I needed to find out what. The day I found out the truth started like any other. I woke up to an empty bed. Sarah had already left, as usual. She'd kissed me on the forehead before heading out, promising to be home by 7 p.m. But by now, I had stopped believing those promises. I called in sick that morning. I wasn't actually sick, but I had decided that enough was enough. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them by sitting around and waiting. Sarah's lies had become too frequent, her excuses too smooth. So when she left the house that day, I waited a few minutes, grabbed my keys, and followed her. At first, everything seemed normal. She drove straight to her office and walked inside. For a brief moment, I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe she really was working late and all of this suspicion was just in my head. But something inside me told me to stay. I parked my car a short distance away and waited. The hours dragged on and nothing happened. She didn't leave. No one approached her. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I started to doubt myself again. Maybe I should just go home. But just as I was about to turn the key in the ignition, I saw it. Mike's car pulling into the lot. My boss. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Maybe he was there for a meeting, or maybe he had other business nearby. But then I saw Sarah walk out of the building. She wasn't carrying files or papers. She wasn't rushing to meet a deadline. She was smiling. A smile I hadn't seen in months. And then, right there in front of me, she leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't a friendly peck, not something casual or innocent. It was the kind of kiss that left no room for misunderstanding. My heart stopped, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight I thought it might snap. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I sat there in my car watching as they climbed into Mike's car and drove off together. My mind was racing, my thoughts crashing into each other. I had been suspicious. Sure, but seeing it with my own eyes was something else entirely. I didn't follow them. I couldn't. Instead, I drove aimlessly for hours, trying to process what I had just seen. My wife, my Sarah, was cheating on me with my boss. The woman I had built my life around and the man I had looked up to professionally were betraying me in the worst way possible. When I finally made it back home, Sarah wasn't there yet. I sat in the dark waiting for her. My mind a storm of anger, sadness, and disbelief. When she finally walked through the door, she acted like everything was normal. Like she hadn't just shattered everything we had built together. I didn't say a word. Not that night. Not the next day. I needed to figure out what to do next. But one thing was clear. Nothing about my life would ever be the same again. The first few days after I saw Sarah and Mike together were pure chaos in my head. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and every time she smiled at me or talked about our future, it felt like she was mocking me. I knew I had to act, but I couldn't just confront her without a plan. My job, my reputation, it was all tied to this tangled mess, and I wasn't going to let her and Mike take everything from me. That's when I thought about Rebecca, Mike's wife. She deserved to know the truth, and I figured if we worked together, we could handle this without either of us losing everything. I reached out to her, just a polite message asking if we could meet for coffee. Rebecca agreed, probably out of curiosity more than anything else. When we sat down, I didn't waste time. "I'm sorry to drop this on you," I started, "but I have reason to believe Mike is cheating on you. And it's with my wife, Sarah." Her face froze. For a moment, I thought she was going to tell me I was insane, but instead, she just stared at me. Silent. I laid it all out. The nights Sarah was working late, the times Mike mysteriously left the office, and the kiss I saw in the parking lot. Rebecca didn't cry, she didn't scream. Instead, she leaned back in her chair and said, "I need proof." That threw me. Proof? Wasn't what I told her enough? But as she explained, I realized she was right. Mike was a powerful man, and if we didn't have solid evidence, he could twist the story and make it look like we were the bad guys. "I'll handle it," Rebecca said, her voice cold and steady. "You just keep pretending everything is fine." The next week was unbearable. Rebecca hired a private investigator, someone discreet but effective. Meanwhile, I kept playing the role of the clueless, loving husband. Sarah didn't suspect a thing. She even started talking about having kids as if nothing had changed. It made me sick, but I had to keep my emotions in check. When Rebecca called me a week later, her voice was trembling. "We need to meet," she said. I could tell something big had happened. We met at the same cafe, and she brought her laptop. She didn't say much, just opened a folder and started showing me pictures and videos. There was Mike, not just with Sarah, but with other women too. At least 5 of them, from what Rebecca had uncovered. It was disgusting, and I felt a strange mix of anger and relief. Anger because of what Sarah and Mike had done. Relief because now we had undeniable proof. Rebecca and I made a pact that day. We weren't going to let them get away with this. But it wasn't just about revenge, it was about protecting ourselves. Mike's actions could destroy Rebecca's life, and Sarah's betrayal had already torn mine apart. As we sat there hashing out a plan, I realized something. Rebecca wasn't just another victim in this mess. She was strong, determined, and completely focused on making things right. It gave me a sense of purpose, something I hadn't felt since this nightmare began. We agreed to take our time, to be smart about how we revealed everything. This wasn't just about confronting our spouses. It was about making sure they faced real consequences for what they'd done. I walked out of that cafe feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks: control. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep me going. The game had changed, and I wasn't going to lose. The company's annual gala was coming up, and if you've ever been to one of these corporate events, you know they're all about appearances. Glamorous, over the top, and filled with people pretending everything is perfect. It couldn't have been a more fitting stage for what Rebecca and I had planned. For weeks, we had been gathering evidence, refining our approach, and staying patient. That patience was the hardest part. Every day I had to look Sarah in the eye and pretend I didn't know. She was acting so normal, cooking dinner, laughing at shows we watched, even suggesting weekend getaways. It was infuriating, but every time I wanted to lash out, I reminded myself that we were playing a bigger game and it was almost time to end it. Rebecca was the one who set everything in motion. She had access to the event details, the guest list, even the seating arrangement. Mike would be there, of course, all smiles and charm alongside Sarah, the two of them thinking they'd pulled one over on everyone. The night of the gala, I got dressed up like it was just another work function. Sarah was glowing, her hair and makeup done perfect. "You look incredible," she said, giving me a kiss on the cheek. The irony wasn't lost on me. The event was held at a 5-star hotel in New York. complete with chandeliers and waiters carrying trays of champagne. It was the kind of place that screamed wealth and success, but beneath all the glitz, I felt the tension building. Every time I spotted Sarah or Mike across the room, my blood boiled, but I kept my face calm. The big moment came toward the end of the evening. I had been nominated for Employee of the Year, which, looking back, was painfully ironic. Mike himself was the one to nominate me, probably to make himself look good considering how closely I worked with him. When my name was called, I walked up to the stage, trying not to let the nerves show. Rebecca was already up there, holding the microphone and the award. She handed it to me, her face completely composed, and then gave me a tiny nod. That was the signal. I took the mic, looked out over the sea of people, and started my speech. At first, it was standard stuff, thanking the company, my team, my supportive wife. But then I said, and speaking of support, I think it's time to acknowledge someone who has gone above and beyond in their personal contributions to my career. The projector screen behind me lit up. Rebecca had arranged everything. Picture after picture appeared, Mike and Sarah together, leaving hotels, holding hands, kissing. The entire room went silent except for the gasps. I turned to the crowd and said, "This award wouldn't be possible without them." Sarah's face turned pale, her eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape. Mike froze, his usual confident smirk replaced by pure panic. Rebecca stepped forward and said, "And to think some people achieve success through hard work and integrity." That's when Joshua, the company's founder and Rebecca's father, stood up. I don't think I'll ever forget the look on his face. Pure fury. He grabbed the microphone and announced that the event was over, demanding everyone leave immediately. As the room cleared out, Sarah avoided my eyes. Mike tried to approach Rebecca, but she walked right past him, her head held high. Back at home, the weight of everything hit me all at once. My life had officially changed forever, and there was no going back. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I'd taken control of my story. The fallout would come, but at least now it was on my term. That night after the gala, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by silence. Sarah hadn't come home, and honestly, I didn't care where she was. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the need to pretend. The mask I had been wearing, the calm, composed husband, was gone. The next morning, I woke up to a message from Rebecca. "Both divorce papers have been served. Let's see how they react." Short and to the point. We were finally moving forward. But the real work wasn't done yet. Sarah showed up at the apartment later that day. She looked nervous, her usual confidence replaced by something fragile. She didn't start with an apology or an explanation. Instead, she just said, "Can we talk?" I crossed my arms, leaning against the counter. "Talk? Now you want to talk?" She flinched but nodded. "I messed up, John. I know that, but can we at least try to fix this?" Her words felt hollow, almost rehearsed. I wanted to scream, to ask her how she could betray me. But instead, I just said, "Sarah, it's too late for that. The papers are already in motion." Her face crumbled. She started crying, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of guilt. But then I reminded myself of everything she had done. The lies, the betrayal, the audacity to pretend like everything was fine while stabbing me in the back. "Why, Sarah?" I asked finally. "Why him? Why any of this?" She wiped her tears and said, "It wasn't about you, John. It was about me." I felt stuck. I wanted more, and Mike, he made me feel alive. Her words hit me like a slap. She didn't even try to deny it or justify it. She just laid it out like it was some excuse, as if her unhappiness made what she did acceptable. I shook my head and said, "You know what? I hope he was worth it, because now you're losing everything." That was the last real conversation we had. From there, everything moved fast. The media got wind of what happened at the gala, and the story blew up. Pictures of Mike and Sarah, alongside Rebecca and me, were everywhere. The humiliation for them was public and complete. In the following weeks, Rebecca and I finalized the divorce plan. Thanks to her father's influence and the airtight evidence we had, neither Mike nor Sarah walked away with anything significant. Mike was fired from the company and blacklisted in the industry. Sarah, she packed her things and moved out of the city without saying goodbye. The company offered me Mike's old position. I took it, not because I wanted his job, but because I needed to prove to myself that I could rise above the mess they'd created. Walking into that office for the first time was surreal. People whispered behind my back. Some offered awkward congratulations, while others just avoided eye contact. It wasn't easy. My personal life had become a joke for some, a cautionary tale for others. But I kept my head down and focused on rebuilding. Now, months later, I still think about Sarah sometimes, not in a longing way, but in a how did we end up here kind of way. I'm not angry anymore, though. I've learned that people make choices, and those choices define them. As for Rebecca, she's doing well. We check in occasionally, more as allies than friends. We survived something awful together, but we both know we need to move on separately. Looking back, well, not looking back, but thinking about it, I don't regret how I handled things. I stood up for myself, exposed the truth, and came out stronger. Life isn't perfect, but it's mine again, and that's enough for now.